Good day, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, so I have two typewriters made by Silver-Seiko in Japan, branded as Royals. You're probably familiar with this. You've probably seen it before on the channel. This is the Royal Mercury, 1971, a fine little ultra-portable typewriter. Well, this is a new addition to my collection. This is a Royal Saturn. It is also, as I said, made by Silver-Seiko, but how it differs from the Mercury is, yes, it has a power cord. This is a Type Bar electric, one of the smallest Type Bar electrics I've ever seen, and very quiet in operation. I thought it would be fun to take a look at it today, so stay tuned. Well, amongst the similarities between these two machines is the way that they enclose the body when it's being stored and carried. So they both use a clamshell lid, and this is the one for the manual Royal. It uses a pair of these plastic prongs that are spring-loaded by a piece of spring metal, and they're activated by these buttons, and they engage underneath the bottom front of the machine to form a clamshell lid. You know, this is the second Royal Mercury I've had in my collection, and both of them, the clips have been very rugged and they haven't broken or anything, which is quite amazing because I've seen on brother machines, on the other hand, I've seen a number of broken clips, so I'm rather confident in the quality of those. And on the other hand, you have the Saturn. It has a similar kind of body shell. It too uses the same kind of clip mechanism. It is a set of heavy-duty plastic clips with a spring steel spring that makes them flex like this, and it works the same way. It clips underneath the front of the machine and forms a clamshell. So both of them are working very similar in philosophy. However, where they do differ in terms of their appearance and construction is the Mercury has an all-metal body shell. The ribbon cover and the main shell of the chassis is all sheet metal, whereas on the Saturn it is plastic. You have a plastic ribbon cover, a plastic upper and lower shell to the machine. The ribbon cover secures itself in place with a similar method that the Mercury does, with metal pins going into round grommets in the body. So it works very similar. So this machine is branded as the Royal Saturn, but it actually has a model number on the back, the SP8000. And Kevin's similar Type Bar Royal is branded as a 1500 model, but it's actually the SP8500. So your model number is back here on the back, and it may differ from the actual model name on the front. Okay, so I have both of these machines back to back, so we kind of have the carriages together. We can take a look at their features. So starting on the left side of the Mercury, the line spacing selector, if you push it all the way to the rear beyond the number 1, there is a dot. That is the carriage lock setting. It's locked right there. And on the Saturn, it has the same setup, really. Like this, you have to push it to the left of center in order to be able to push that lever to the dot, and when you do so, it locks the carriage. So it's very nice. So both of these machines have 1, 1.5, and 2 line spacing, and the numbers or the nomenclature on the line spacing selector is accurate. It actually says 1 and then a line for 1.5 and then 2. You'll notice that a lot of Olivetti's, on the other hand, say 1, 2, and 3, but it's actually 1, 1.5, and 2. And what's going on with the Olivetti's is they're telling you line spacing position 1, 2, and 3, corresponding to 1, 1.5, and 2. Yeah, that's confusing, and I like the way the Silver-Seiko implemented it much better. And if you go beyond the 2 line spacing, there is a 0 setting, and the 0 setting is for the infinite variable. It disconnects the line spacing clutch, and that is a temporary setting. You can go back to your original line spacing once you go back out of the 0 mode. Same thing on the Saturn, has the same feature. If you look at the paper bales between both machines, they're essentially identical in design. They have the little flat bale with a line scale, and it has on the right side the little raised little protrusion right here for your finger, so you can flip it up like that. Very handy. And both of these machines have the same width of platen, but the Mercury is a pica and the Saturn is an elite typeface, so the numbers on the scales are different. The Mercury goes up to 82, the Saturn goes up to 101. And also the carriage knobs, not identical in design, but they're very similar. Line spacing levers are similar in design, but not exactly the same. And the margin settings are very similar, if actually identical margin setting controls. These are push and slide controls. And since we're here, you might notice that the shifting on both machines, it is a carriage shift machine, but it is a pivot style carriage shift, not the full lift style. So you can see on both of these, you're not lifting the entire carriage, you're just pivoting it on a rear axle or rear pivot point. So it's lighter shifting than a full carriage shift, even though it's not a segment shift, which is one of the things I really like about these machines. Both machines have the same kind of paper support finger, which I really like the way these are implemented. You have just a little raised protrusion here that you push down to deploy it. It's much easier to deploy these than on some of the other machines where the finger is hidden inside behind the rear scale and you sometimes have to pry it up with your finger. This is really easy. Just push the little lever down and it raises up. Very nice and simple. Both of these also have the same kind of feed roller release or paper release lever, and it's a little bit non-standard because on most machines you pull it forward to release the paper. On these Silver-Seikos you push the release to the rear to release the pressure on the feed rollers, just like here and here. And of course, it has only one carriage release lever on the right side, the right platen knob, right here and here, so very similar as well. Okay, here is the view with both machines' ribbon covers removed, and you might notice they both use a set of grommets right here and here that engage a pin underneath the ribbon cover to secure the ribbon cover in place. In the place of the Saturn, yeah, the ribbon cover is plastic, but it is using a set of metal pins engaging into the grommet. And I will say that on this Saturn, these pins are very tight, or the grommets are tight. You do have to use quite a bit of pulling force to remove them. And this was the case also with the, I think it's the 1500, the one that Kevin has. It's also a Type Bar Royal like this. It also had a very tight ribbon cover post system. So these grommets are quite tight, but they do secure the ribbon cover nicely. So if you examine the whole setup here, you're going to notice that the layout is almost identical. These brackets that hold the Type Bar rest and the Type Bar rest having a rubber tube as a rest support, those are the same. They both have this little raised support here and here, which I'm thinking is kind of a guard or support for the ribbon cover itself. And then the Type Bar linkages look very similar, although not identical. You'll notice, especially with the Saturn, it has for the outer 5 Type Bar linkages on either side, there is a special bracket here with some slots, and those, I guess, are supporting these linkages a little bit better. So it has essentially the same kind of ribbon lift system, and the card guide and the card scale and the whole printing point is identical in both machines. So really the carriages and the whole center part of the machine is almost identical. I think the biggest difference between both of these machines is going to be that the Mercury uses 1/2-inch ribbon, while the Saturn uses 9/16 inch ribbon, and that is something that we'll have to talk about in a minute. But in the meantime, here's both machines side by side, so you can see the footprint on the Saturn is a little bit bigger than the other, but there's a lot of wasted body shell trim here that makes it look bigger, because this plastic flange that runs along the sides of this Saturn definitely makes it look bigger. The chassis is actually about the same size, which is amazing. So looking at the keyboards, these are modern manual typewriter keyboards, so they have the 1 exclamation mark, the plus equals, the quarter, half, fraction in the same place, your margin release, shift lock. The only real difference is really the keyboard on the electric is a modern electric keyboard, meaning you have the apostrophe and quote mark to the right of the colon semicolon, and so the apostrophe is an unshifted character, whereas on the manual typewriter it's using the typical shifted 8 for the apostrophe, which makes this keyboard layout a little bit better for writing, especially fiction, writing dialogue, where people speak in contractions and you want to use a lot of apostrophes for that, it's just easier to access those. The ribbon color selector is also in the same position, but you'll notice the direction is different. So on the Mercury, the top of the ribbon is in the front selector, the stencil position's in the middle, the lower part of the ribbon is in the back position for the lever, whereas on the Saturn, you have the bottom of the ribbon is towards you, the top of the ribbon is in the middle, and the stencil position is in the back position. You'll also notice that these positions don't really line up as far as the visual view from the operator's perspective. For instance, I have it on the middle position, which should be the top of the ribbon, and to me it looks like it's adjacent to the white stencil position, which is up here, and you can see they're not adjacent to each other. So there's just a little bit of parallax error. They could have moved this scale up a little bit. It would have been a little better. That's really one of my only few gripes. And then, of course, this machine does not have a touch selector, whereas the Mercury does, and that's because it's electric. It has a power switch. And yes, the machine is actually on, and you may not even be able to hear it, but it is certainly on. Now, it has this extra key right here, a lever. It does not operate when the machine is on. When it's off, it does operate. It moves this little lever, and you might ask, what the heck does that do? Maybe it's a key de-jammer. Well, it actually is not a key de-jammer, because if you jam two typewriters together, turn it off, it won't de-jam them. And the only thing I can see that it actually does is there's a lever down here that pushes on the drive spindle, and it just turns the drive spindle a little bit. So I guess they saw the need for maybe the machine would jam the drive spindle for some reason, and this is an unjammer for that. But in the later version of this machine that Kevin has, the 1500, doesn't have this feature. So this was like an early design element that they later on removed. Similar keyboards, key shapes are different. The Mercury has the more classic modern plastic kind of keys, where the electric one, they're shallower, they have a wider kind of a footprint to them. So like you notice the Mercury, there's a lot of space between the key, like you could get your finger caught underneath behind them or whatever. Whereas on this, there is this big wide square platform at the bottom of the keys that kind of covers up all the blank space. And then also there's a round dished in top where the key legends are, and that makes it really nice for your fingertips. Okay, so let's take a little side detour, talk about the ribbon. So this machine takes a 9/16 inch wide ribbon, and I happen to be using a used 1/2 inch ribbon, and it works, but the tops or bottoms of the characters do get cut off occasionally. So what I've done here is I've called Lonnie from Ribbons Unlimited, and he shipped me out a couple red-black 9/16 inch ribbon. I have not opened the box yet. Okay, a used 1/2 inch ribbon. We don't need that anymore. Put that aside for our archives. And okay, let's open up the package that Lonnie sent me. By the way, I really like Ribbons Unlimited. I really love working with Lonnie. He's a great guy, and he really supports the typewriter community. Oh, so nice little paper bags. This little bag is very cool. The stickers he has on them, but on the back is a really cool little sticker about how they provide help to the typewriter community, the collector community, and even a little quote from Tom Hanks, which is very cool. Like this. And I like the plastic bag he has to store these in. So the spare ribbon I'm not going to be using right now, I have it in the bag so it hopefully won't dry out. That's a really great touch. Thank you, Lonnie. I appreciate it. Oh, neat. Nice touch, Lonnie. A metal spool. How cool is that? Okay, nice. It's engaged. Like that. That. Now I got to wipe my hands off, and we're ready to test the machine. Okay, I'm going to do this with the ribbon cover removed, just so you can see everything. So this does have a hard platen. It needs to be replaced, and I'm using relatively thin newsprint paper, so I'm going to use a backing sheet with it. And it was punching through quite a bit on this thin paper without a backing sheet. So this machine threads up identical, really, to the Mercury, Royal Mercury. You do have to lift up the flat paper bale to get the paper underneath it. And of course we have to unlock the carriage, turn it on, Okay. Yes, very nice imprint. I love it. Electric typewriter machines have a very light touch, and in this machine, less than 5mm key throw, hardly any force at all required, and it makes a nice dark imprint, and it's electrified. So the typewriter is essentially manually operated in terms of the carriage. Manually moving the carriage back and forth using the carriage release lever, returning the carriage manually with the return lever, line advance is manual, backspace is manual, tabulator is manual. And by the way, this machine has fixed tabs every 10 spaces. And a manual spacebar, so you can turn the machine off and the spacebar and the backspace and the tabulators all work. So essentially the only thing electric about this is the key operation. The type bars are electrified, but other than that, it's a fully manual experience. And it's really kind of the best of both worlds because you have the very light touch, no finger force really required. And it's a very quiet machine. The motor runs almost silently. It's one of the quietest typewriter electrics I've seen. This is a nice darkly inked ribbon. I would say this ribbon is right on par with Seiko ribbons as far as how dark they are. The machine makes a very nice, precise imprint, which is what I've found to be true with all the Silver-Seiko Royal machines, whether electric or manual. So being a typewriter electric, it does have some repeat keys. So the X, the period, and the dash hyphen. So weighing this machine with its clamshell lid in place, which makes it a portable, it has the handle integrated to the lid, it becomes a true portable typewriter, and it weighs in at just over 15 pounds, about 15.5 pounds. So truly a portable electric typewriter, I'd say. Okay, it's important that I make a balanced review, so the question is there anything about this machine you don't really like, Joe? And that is yes. What I don't like about this one, and also the SP8500, the power cord comes out of the back of the machine, and it comes out at a point above this central flange that sticks out, which means that the clamshell lid has to fit over the bottom of this lip, so the power cord has to be inside the machine when you put the clamshell lid on. Well, if you ask yourself, where am I going to put the power cord? And this is a problem that I've seen that bugs me with both, these Royal Electrics and also some of the Smith Coronas even, is they never really made room in the case of the Smith Corona for the power cord. It's always seemed like a afterthought. You have to kind of fold it along the left side, tuck it in there, and in the case of this Royal, it's a little bit more a pain in the patootie because, so again, you have to have so carriage is locked, you have to have the power cord in the machine, so there's not really much room to put the whole cord in the segment, but I do a little bit of the cord in the segment. What you can also do is wrap it around, let's say, underneath the right platen knob, sort of underneath the gap in the carriage, run it along just by the right ribbon spool into the segment here, and then some of the power cord will be in the segment, but then you have to put the rest of the power cord, basically lay it over the keyboard. If you see like that, that's basically this little gap here, this little area above the keyboard, that's where the cord has to go. It's not very well thought out, but anyways, if you get it done right and you put the lid on, and then as you're pressing it down, you can kind of feel the power cord pushing on the keys, and that's not a very comfortable feeling. So an alternative way would be to start wrapping it around the platen knobs. Start off like from here, go to one side, I went to the right side, go underneath the right platen knob, in front of the platen, underneath the left platen knob, and keep repeating it And you'll go maybe 2 or 3 laps around there until you don't have any more room to wrap. Maybe you can go one more, perhaps, like that, and then tuck the power cord into the segment area. And now the question is, will the clamshell lid go on? And you have to make sure the bottom here goes underneath the back lip. And yeah, it does go on, so you can wrap it around the platen, around the carriage, making sure you tuck it underneath the knobs, and hopefully it's not going to interfere too much with the ribbon and maybe get ribbon ink on the power cord or whatever. So as always, there's this relevant question: who is this typewriter for? Well, you can kind of tell by the styling and the size of it, it was probably intended to be satisfying like the student market. High school and college, secondary and university education. It seems obvious to me, but in this heyday of the post-typewriter era and the typewriter revival, this kind of a typewriter seems to satisfy the needs for people who want to do high volume typing. Maybe you're working on long form written work. You're going to be doing a lot of typing, a lot of first draft writing, and you're concerned about the ergonomics, carpal tunnel and fingers and tendons, and also just the pleasure of typing on a machine that requires very little finger force and always delivers a consistent imprint. I think these are great machines for that usage mode. And also, because this machine is only 15.5 pounds. You can carry it places. Maybe you want to go on a retreat, a writer's retreat, and you have electricity and you want to just spend some quality time working on a project without any distraction. An electric type bar typewriter is a really great solution. That's what I think the best use case is for these. Or if you have one of those fancy new pickup trucks with an electrical outlet in the back of it, you can go drive out to the New Mexico desert and type to your heart's content with your electric typewriter on the tailgate. So go desert tailgating with your electric typewriters like Kevin and I did recently, or any other usage where you need the convenience of electricity and you want it still to be portable and lightweight and a good performer. It has all the features that I really like. I like a machine with 12 characters per inch, or basically smaller than Pica. I like having half line spacing. Really checks all the boxes. Of course, red, black ribbon. As far as the quality of the plastic housing, it took quite a bit of time to clean this machine up. I did a lot of cleaning and degreasing on the inside and the outside. The plastic was marred up quite badly and dirty, but I used the LA's Awesome Degreaser that you get at one of the dollar stores. That stuff works really well on plastic bodies like this. I did add quite a bit of sound insulation to the machine. On the bottom panel below the chassis, I have a 1/4 inch thick dense rubber pad, and then all the hollow body spaces on the sides I filled up with urethane foam where I could, and in places where the tolerances were a lot tighter, like around the motor pulley and drive belt, I just used the thin adhesive craft foam, and also the craft foam I did put on the inside of the ribbon cover and other places where it didn't permit the thicker urethane foam. So a lot of soundproofing to help dampen the resonating plastic body shell sound, and it worked really well. But this is a beautiful machine, and you can't beat the robin's egg blue color, of course. I think that's wonderful. My friend Bill Teft, we were talking on the phone the other day, and he had this great phrase. He said, "Our mission is to normalize typewriter usage." I love the way he expressed that. We're not trying to compete with computers or say these are a replacement for computers. We're saying we're simply trying to normalize the use of typewriters in our culture. And I hope you guys are working toward that end as well. Use these machines for your creative expression, and I appreciate all what you guys give me in terms of support. Please like and subscribe down below, and until next time, have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.